Okay, let's start the show.
For Thursday, April 14th, 2016, welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this week. A lovely day, and I'm joined by two awesome co-hosts.
You remember our names?
Yes. Right. To my immediate left, it's Jeremy Williams.
Hello.
And to his left, Patrick Norton.
Hey, everybody.
We're joined by Patrick and Jeremy this week. A lot of stuff going on, but what's new with you guys? What's been going on with your lives?
Oh, man. Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing, just being a dad, playing with technology.
Testing technology, I would hope. Patrick, we haven't had you on the podcast for a while. How are things going?
I was good. Making tech thing, doing the dad thing, rebuilt the front of the engine in my truck. That was exciting.
Nice.
Cummins diesel parts are like working, they're like the Duplo of the engine world because all the parts are just huge and oversized.
How long is that process?
For a normal person or for somebody who's being interrupted by a 3-year-old on a regular basis.
For Patrick Norton.
Normally it should be about 12 hours. At this point, it's probably a 22-hour project in climbing.
Wow.
Well, it's something, it's maybe in the not so far future, that's going to be a skill that won't be required or possible with electric cars.
After the mandate goes through and we eliminate all internal combustion engines.
Because that's what it's going to take for you, right?
No, it's, I'm a gearhead, and I was taught early on by some guys that did motorcycle drag racing, the awesomeness of the electric motors, that it has a flat torque curve. You get all of the torque from 0 to all of the RPMs, and that's what's so funny. Like the Chevy Volt, a friend of mine was like, "Oh, I got a Chevy Volt," and he got into it, and he's like, "It's got 300 foot-pounds of torque. It weighs nothing. It's a rocket.
It'll peel.
Yeah.
You don't burn rubber if you floor that thing."
Right. Instant torque, the response.
Yeah.
There's no ramp up.
And the Tesla Roadster is one of the most, a friend of mine bought one, and for reasons I don't entirely understand, let me drive it. I'm still grateful. But that thing was, it was like a racing go-kart that would do 160 miles an hour. You couldn't break it loose. It was they're amazing electric cars. I just want to get to the point where it's not going to cost me $35 to buy one that I can almost fit me and my 2 kids and a piece of luggage inside.
$35,000.
Yeah.
Before taxes.
Because I'm kind of cheap, and I look at cars I love cars. I love trucks. I love vehicles. I love living in Alameda because all the amazing vehicles parked on the street. But I don't feel like carrying a car loan on something that depreciates faster than I can pay it off. I find that irritating and financially stupid.
Yeah, you mentioned that the Tesla Roadster feels like it's almost like a go-kart.
Yeah.
And that's so true. It's indicative of how electric cars just feel differently. They drive differently. They ride differently. The whole experience of being a driver or a passenger in these cars, and soon the cars that will drive themselves, is there's a demarcation between traditional internal combustion engine cars that we've been driving for 100 years and these cars now.
Yeah, well, part of the reason the Tesla Roadster feels like a go-kart is because the center of gravity is so low. I mean, like a racing go-kart, like a shifter kart, where and that massive amount of torque in this little tiny Lotus body, and your butt's about 3 inches off the ground. It feels like, but yeah, the electric cars, it's I still find it unnerving to have all of that power and no noise. I still find it deeply unsettling. It's just surreal. Like, you
got to download the sound pack.
That I think
the
makes
Maserati
it worse
sound
for
me.
me.
The Veyron sound pack.
Yeah, or that BMW i7 actually has speakers externally and internally.
Which I think actually, having been nearly hit by a Tesla driver on the streets of San Francisco, which immediately turned me into my 18-year-old in New York City self, where I picked my boot up and aimed it at the front of the car, and the guy put his hands up and stopped moving. I was like, really? You've got the special Tesla license. You can go through a full crosswalk against the light. But they're quiet.
I know.
Yep.
We were going to talk about a little bit about Tesla this week. There's a lot of stuff going on, but as is customary now, Patrick, before we talk about tech, we're going to do the pop culture recap because people want to hear it, and there's stuff going on.
Cars are pop culture.
Absolutely. Last week we talked a little bit about the Star Wars Rogue One trailer, our reactions to it. No spoilers or details, and it seems like the big trailer this week is Doctor Strange, Marvel's Doctor Strange. I know if Kishore was here, he would have a lot to say about this trailer. Have you seen the trailer?
No, I haven't. I don't know anything about Doctor Strange.
I think this is going to be another one of those Marvel movies, much like Guardians of the Galaxy or even Ant-Man, where you trust the movie based on the brand, the Marvel brand. You know it's going to be tied in that universe if you're invested in that somehow. You know, they cherry pick this character. He's a huge character in the comics. He inhabits the mystical realm, and so just as Guardians of the Galaxy was Marvel's space adventure Star Wars like movie, this is going to be their mystic movie, their magic movie.
This with Benedict Cumberbatch.
It is. Benedict Cumberbatch plays Doctor Strange, and from plenty of set photos and from the trailer, he looks very much like the character. I think he's a pretty good fit.
There were some good photos of him taking a break from the shoot in order to walk into a comic book store.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty classy.
They were in New York buying Doctor Strange comics.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
That's great.
Which I think kind of even fits the character. He can, travel between the realms, between the multiverses, and that character really emerged in the kind of psychedelic era of Marvel Comics, the old Nick Fury Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that whole era, where writers and artists were taking drugs and exploring their own mystical realms.
We're really going to push the medium, man.
Yeah. But I'm looking forward to it. It comes out later this year, so it's like December. So both Star Wars and this Doctor Strange movie out this year.
The sets look beautiful. It'll be interesting to see because he's an incredibly talented actor.
True.
When he gets going.
Yeah.
And the Civil War is just a month or two away, isn't it?
It's like a month away.
So that's 2 Marvel movies this year, at least.
Yeah,
right?
I think they're on that route. The 2 movies this year, and if they can make a $1 billion movie in the summer and a $1 billion movie in the winter, Disney will do it. They'll do 2. They'll do 2 Star Wars movies a year and 2 Marvel movies a year, and they own Pixar. So what's gonna stop them?
That's right. Finding Dory.
That's all. That's Marvel. It's Pixar. Yeah. Is Pixar doing 2 movies this year?
I don't think so.
They did. My understanding is they did 2 movies last year because one of the movies got held up because things went sideways.
Right. They changed directors. It was very much. You're talking about The Good Dinosaur, where the director switched over to Pete Son, who was the inspiration for the character Russell in Up. I know you love Pixar, Jeremy.
Who doesn't?
I could not get through The Good Dinosaur.
Oh, I got through it because I was sitting there with my kids and they were getting through it. But I didn't.
haven't watched it yet.
That's the one Pixar movie I haven't bought. Yeah, so there you go.
Did you
Cars 2? Did you buy Cars 2?
Yeah, no, I like Cars 2. I don't see what all the hate is about Cars 2.
Did you like the 2nd and 3rd episode of the Matrix too?
Come on, man. Don't swing that low. No. No, Cars 2 is the surprising thing about it was that seemed like it was made for older kids than the first one was. I mean, it's basically like a James Bond film.
Out of my respect and love for you and the time we spend together on the podcast, I am going to watch Cars 2 again, but like we didn't even let Seamus watch it. Like there was just it was
because it was bad or because it was violent.
It was a mixture of both. He wasn't really ready for violence. I mean, this was a kid who got to the bar scene in Star Trek and panicked. So like we weren't going to have him go to the gunfight with the Cars character, but it was mostly that it was just atrocious.
Really?
It seemed really weak.
Maybe I should watch it again too, and then we should compare notes because it's been a while. But I remember liking it. I remember being surprised because I actually saw it on video after all of the, everyone hated it. So maybe that was part of it.
I finally saw Planes. One of our neighbors loaned it for the kids to see, and it was so bizarre to see the characters, like the Disney version of Pixar characters.
Yeah,
like that was very surreal.
I refused to watch that.
Yeah, because that one was made by Pixar.
It wasn't bad.
I think the backlash against Cars isn't that and it's interesting to hear that you thought it was a more adult-like than the first one, right? Made for older kids. But I think the general backlash against Cars is that it's a movie that panders, really, because it's such a big merchandising machine. And not like the other Disney movies aren't merchandising machines, like Toy Story. I mean, that movie is about toys, to sell toys. But Cars, it hits something where Cars has become Disney, Pixar's, their merchandise juggernaut, their licensing juggernaut. And that kind of that feeling of that more explicit selling out even though Disney is all about selling you stuff, maybe the purists feel like that's too much.
I don't know. I mean, I still like, episode 1, 2, 3. I just remember, like, at some point I was like, George sat down. He's like, maybe I'll do a script, but I need to put together a list of things I can sell first. And then I'm going to wrap a script around that. And then I'm going to do a bunch of pseudoscience to glue it together. And maybe I'll pay attention to the process. Maybe I won't. But, like, that to me felt like the ultimate pandering for toys. I don't feel... I mean, it's at this point, like, when you walk into a toy store or the toy section of a Target, it's all merchandising and it's all branded characters and everything. They've got the deal set up to see how much they can wring out of the intellectual property as far as they can go down the line. And sometimes that's fun, like, getting the boys the little Millennium Falcon, quadcopters was awesome. Because who doesn't want to watch their kid wander around behind the Millennium Falcon inside the house? But in other cases, it's just garbage. I don't know. So many of the toys made for kids today are just absolute garbage. It's frustrating.
Yeah, and Pixar says they won't make movies unless they have a story for them.
Yeah.
And Cars and Cars 2, directed both by John Lasseter, they are clearly movies he wanted to make. He had a story to tell. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen Cars 2, so I can't really speak to it.
Really?
And it's not for me, I think. I saw Cars, it was all right, but...
That's the thing, it's very much unlike Cars that way. Like in Cars, who's the bad guy? Right. No bad guy.
It's the Dax.
Well, the green car.
It's
who?
The guy who plays the green car. The guy that's modeled after... oh, goodness, I can't think of the guy's name.
Mater? Are you talking about...
No. The green race car. I should know these names.
Oh, well, I mean, he's sort of the competition. But
don't confuse it with Talladega Nights, Patrick. There's a green race car that's the villain in that movie, too.
He's not the antagonist, right? There's no... It's just Lightning McQueen out there. And
his ego.
It's his
Lightning
ego,
is
right?
ego.
That's the bad guy. Whereas in the second one, they make a more clear distinction. Like, there's a true bad guy. So I like that.
There's also... they're doing a sequel to Incredibles, and that's one that... Like I thought the first movie was perfect and didn't need a sequel, and I'll be interested to see if this sequel that they're working on is something that felt like they needed to do, or because there's a great story there, or because it's just like, oh, it's time to revisit The Incredibles because people love that movie and they love the characters.
I mean, you could say the same thing of almost all their movies. Finding Nemo.
That's the thing, because you would think that
had a pretty sweet ending, and then my understanding was Andrew Stanton wanted to make another live action movie, and their deal was, if you do another Finding Nemo, we'll work that out.
Andrew Stanton also being the one who directed John Carter.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're not gonna let him do another action movie.
I think it was after that he wanted to do more, but that was a rumor.
And so it's like Finding Dory.
Yeah.
See, that's the kind of mentality, and I don't know if these rumors are true, but that's exactly the kind of mentality I think that the purists
want to avoid.
They're rebelling against. And also the idea that Pixar, like, one of their successes has been coming up with original stories and original franchises. I don't even call them franchises, but original movies that aren't just sequels.
It was interesting. One of the neighbors where I live, one of his son's parents works at Pixar and got to do a tour. He said one of the interesting conversations they had while they were over touring. Basically, he said we didn't get to see, like, seeing the artwork and stuff was pretty amazing. But he said it was interesting to hear this guy say, like, well, we're basically being told that we've got to up the production. Period. We're going to be doing more movies whether we want to or not.
I mean, that was the problem with DreamWorks. Once DreamWorks had success with Shrek, Katzenberg said they're going to do 2 movies a year, and they had this expectation, and they tried to do that, and it didn't work out, and then a lot of their side studios shuttered.
Yeah.
The one in the Bay Area went away, and now it's just the one in L.A. Have you guys seen that video that Michael Arndt did? It's on YouTube. He was the screenwriter of Toy Story 3, and he also did the first pass on The Force Awakens, or Episode 7 script before J.J. Abrams and Lawrence Kasdan took over. He did this video about screenwriting and storytelling. How does he start a story was the basic premise. And he used 3...
So it's setting a story in motion?
Something like that, yeah. And he used 3 Pixar movies as examples, and he didn't exactly tie it into how he would have written Episode 7, but he basically found a way thematically to tie all the Pixar movies about why these stories resonate. And I'm going to summarize it really quickly, but I thought it was really, really interesting. He says that in all these stories, there's a hero, and the very first thing that you learn is what the hero is about, his obsession, the hero's character passion. Like if it's Woody loves being Andy's toy. If it's Mr. Incredible, he loves being a superhero. And if it's the dad in Finding Nemo, he loves his son. And then something happens in the world that's the plot twist that sets the actual story in motion. That is an unexpected thing in the world that makes what the hero does impossible, makes it unfair. Right. So in Toy Story, it's the introduction of Buzz Lightyear and the toys loving Buzz Lightyear. In Incredibles, it's the passing of the law and superheroes not being allowed to be superheroes. Or in Finding Nemo, it's Nemo, wanting to be, wanting to be independent. Mm-hmm. And it's what the main character does, that the main character trying his best or her best to stick to what they love. So Mr. Incredible still fighting crime despite the law. Andy doing the bad thing by pushing Buzz over the bed. That sets the story in motion.
Woody.
And that's Woody doing
Andy
that.
didn't do that.
Woody did that. I'm sure Andy messed around with Buzz Lightyear and threw him around, knocked the toys around from time to time. But that sets the story in motion and then gives you the conflict that then the characters and their motivations then give you the natural conclusion. I thought that was really interesting, and I thought that was like a really great way to summarize. Oh, why do we love these characters in the Pixar movies, and what is it about the predicament they find themselves in that makes it so compelling that we want them to win, even though they all make mistakes. Yeah.
Have you ever seen the story lessons that a woman named Emma Coates was a storyboard, or as far as I know, is a storyboard artist for Pixar, and she put together a list of like 20 something. I found out about it from IO9, Narrative Wisdom, and it's like, number one, you admire a character for trying more than for their successes. 2, you got to keep in mind what's interesting for you as an audience, not what's fun to do as a writer. They can be very different. Number 4, once upon a time there was blank, every day blank, one day blank, because of that blank, until finally blank. And it's funny to watch, it's amazing advice on character development, story development. I mean, I've always dreamed of seeing the video. It seemed like there was a tradition at Pixar where the director would basically tell the story in the auditorium in front of like the entire Pixar staff.
Yeah, the brain trust.
Yeah, and the idea of somebody like walking you through the entirety of Cars or Finding Nemo and doing that as a storyteller on a stage and being like, okay, I got this, now we can finish animating and all that stuff is just a really compelling concept. And it's really hard to tell a story that people want to listen to for 90 minutes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think it's that they tell the most unpredictable stories, right, or they change the rules of storytelling. It's almost the opposite. They have these lessons. To tell a good story, they know they have this list of things they keep going to, and they just have great ideas.
Yeah, and especially for the first several films, they really used computer technology to its best, to its fullest. They couldn't do humans very well, but they could do toys that looked realistic, that kind of thing. And they put you underwater, right, and put you behind leaves in a way that we'd never been able to do convincingly with hand-drawn animation.
Do you feel like at this point that is less important to the films? Not that the films aren't technically impressive, because they develop all sorts of interesting technologies, but
there's something sweet about the early days when computer technology really was a limiting factor. Not that it isn't anymore. I'm sure they still have to budget their simulation time and what they actually want to spend their processing on, but it's certainly become less restrained, and I do kind of miss that.
And they build new systems all the time.
Right.
I mean, they talked about in like A Good Dinosaur, for example, all the landscape stuff. They built crazy landscape systems. You think about Brave. Oh, what do you think about? Oh, the hair, right, and the main character. But even like Disney, down in LA, Disney Animation Studios, and the recent hits they've had with Frozen and doing the snow simulation, or
the render engine for Big Hero 6.
Yeah, Hyperion for Big Hero 6, and doing the soft lighting through Baymax's plastic skin and that crazy the city shots and that stuff. Like
those are exquisite.
All the studios can spend years of research executing on things, but it all ends up being the story that sticks with you.
Yeah. Then they spend so much time on things like the cityscape in Big Hero 6, but they don't allow you to appreciate what they did so much. It's these wide shots, and I want that to be a real time simulation that I can dive into and
Of course you
examine
do. But then that's not the story.
No, it's true. But
Then SimCity.
But right now, a small mid-level executive at Disney is going, got it. 3D animation for Vive and Oculus Rift. Explore our universes.
No, I think it's
Absolutely.
it's the restraint. It's a director knowing that even though they have that tool to say we can zoom in to the to the city level and zoom out,
Right.
it's the director saying, well, you know what? I'm not gonna do like that crazy pan out shot 4 times in this movie. We're gonna have like a couple flybys and make one exhilarating sequence, and that's gonna be that's how you build up to that, and that's why audiences will feel leave them wanting a little more, but give them enough to be satisfied. Yeah. That's why we're not directors or screenwriters. We're just podcasters.
there was no Pixar in the pop culture section of this show, by the way.
Written in. No,
we just landed there.
We just landed there. Hey, speaking of things landing there, we had a big landing last week. Going back to Tesla and affiliate company SpaceX, we had the SpaceX Stage 1. First stage rocket landing on the drone barge successfully.
Falcon 9.
Falcon 9 rocket.
Landed for the first time successfully on a barge at sea.
That's incredible.
Awesome.
It looks so fake, and then you watch it over and over again and over again, and then you realize it's really legitimate, and then you see the close-up photographs where the rocket's basically the ones they took on the barge itself, and it's just like, oh my God,
Yeah.
oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh
Totally.
my God.
It looks like reverse footage, right?
That's
Yeah.
right. Someone said that if you play it backwards,
It looks like it's launching.
it looks more like a realistic or
Yeah.
more believable
Right.
as a launch than does as a landing.
And then the rocket whispers Paul is dead.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, you can look it up, and there are a lot of like comparisons of how difficult this is, but it was not easy as a challenge because we're talking about automated systems not only on the rocket, moving at tremendous speeds, returning to the water or the land or to Earth, and then also a remote controlled ship
Right.
that had to coordinate with it, and environmental conditions.
Ships
and
move on the ocean. They move up and they move down, and that's really awkward when you're landing a drone, much less a rocket.
So to do it once, incredible. To
Right.
prove it could be done. So now the challenge is to make it repeatable at a statistically significant rate.
Right.
To make it so it becomes a regular thing.
And then they can save more fuel, and they can take bigger loads into space.
So last time they tried this, they crashed. And it's a magnificent video. That's worth watching too. But what did they do differently this time? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
They took the parking brake off. Sorry.
Good for them.
Yeah, it's if you haven't seen the footage, go out, just search for SpaceX and landing.
I think looking at this footage, in my mind, it's like, is it as big an achievement as the first, the Mercury space programs and those rockets taking off? I think it has the potential to be bigger because the idea is to make one, it's a private company, and two, their goal is to make this a regular occurrence. So you can forecast in the future, this is like the first commercial satellite launch, where now private and commercial satellite launches happen all the time.
Right.
And they don't even make the news. And so if you can think of a future where stage 1 rocket landings on the ocean are a regular occurrence where they don't make the news, that's a crazy future to think about. And that changes that's where manned spaceflight is also something that doesn't make the news. If people are just going up and down and up and down on a regular basis, not as frequent as airplane flights, but like I think commercial satellites.
Nobody was paying attention anymore.
Exactly, like then, and at a completely successful rate. That's incredible.
I know I don't know, the whole privatization of space travel. I was thinking about that on the way in this morning, and it's so, I don't know. Part of me is like, there's people are talking about updates on the idea of the trip to Mars and thinking about how like all of the interesting I'm not going to say that, because then the next time someone from NASA sees me, they'll punch me in the head, and rightfully so. So much of the high-profile stuff is being done by the private companies right now, by SpaceX. And it's like, because the other thing is, it wasn't that long ago that they did that incredible skyhook drop onto the surface of Mars. So there are incredible things going on at NASA, but it's crazy to see private companies doing stuff that is this revolutionary.
Yeah.
And generating excitement with youth, with young engineers.
We need more of those.
I want to know how how it's funded. I mean, where is SpaceX's funding coming from?
A lot of it's government contracts.
And what about the Falcons that they lose? Is that insured?
No. I think it's part of R&D.
Yeah.
Built into the R&D of, so that they can continue and they can forecast and get a manned mission up. I mean, that's their eventual plan, right? To be the company that sends up astronauts to the ISS.
Well,
beyond that, go to
and
Mars.
Beyond. Yeah, absolutely.
So at the beginning of January, they raised another $1 billion in funding from Google and Fidelity. The initial funding was, I think, SpaceX and not SpaceX, Elon Musk. But I think they've gone through already $1 billion in capital in the last 10 years, which is a lot of money.
That's significant.
Yeah, as of May 2012, SpaceX operated on total funding of approximately $1 billion in its first 10 years of operation. Private equity provided $200 million. Musk invested $100 million of his own money, like another $100 million from various investors.
Of things that make us feel like we're in the future, there are rockets, reusable rockets. There's also robots.
Right.
And Google unveiled a new robot from a company they acquired, much like their acquisition of Boston Dynamics, recently at the New Economic Summit conference in Tokyo, Japan. Google Shaft Robotics. Shaft. Is that a play on like soft robotics? Because this is not a soft robot. Shaft robot.
What's a soft robot?
Soft robot. It's like
Big
robots.
Hero 6.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like inflatable robots.
Got it.
Robots can rubberize robots. Shaft Robotics is a bipedal robot, and you got to Google this right now. Shaft is spelled Schaft, and when I saw this robot walk, I immediately thought that looks like a stop motion robot from RoboCop. That looks like Ed 209's ancestor. This is Ed 109 or Ed just 009.
It's an interesting design because you have like these shoulders that are also hips, right? And they come up, and the legs basically reach up to shoulder height, and then they can move up and down from there. But it's bipedal, so it walks around.
Yeah.
And it can go upstairs.
That's the important thing.
It's awesome.
Yes. Yeah. I think the mechanism that makes this robot look cool is those hips, that its legs extend beyond the hips, much like if you look at Ed 209 from RoboCop, that it's not just a locked joint at the end of the legs. It can go up and down, and of course there are joints for the feet. But the video of it going up and down stairs, pretty impressive. I think the idea is that this type of robot could be used in commercial industries, construction, automobile industry, of course, but could also have some consumer-facing usage. A grocery getter. You put them in the back of your car or in the home to carry stuff up and down actual stairs.
Absolutely, especially for elderly or people who are living assisted. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Of course, anime fans out there, as I'm getting to the bottom of articles, explain the name of this robot. Shaft is actually a name from a Japanese manga. It's from the Pat Labor series.
Good to know. It's also a band, apparently.
Shaft.
Oh my goodness! It is the strangest thing. The way the hips kick out, the legs kick out.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna need some wide hallways for this.
So Google's rumored to be selling Boston Robotics. They have 2 robotic initiatives going internally right now
that we know of.
Yeah, right. Exactly right. I mean,
and autonomous vehicles.
What is Google's interest in robotics?
Skynet.
Well, I mean, AI and robotics are things that are typically married, and one assists the other, and AI totally makes sense. AI is a huge new frontier. Microsoft, Facebook, Google all want to use their server prowess and their data centers, to build AI, build smart knowledge graphs that humans can interact with and developers can use in some way. Google being a company that sells ads, uses the AI to then better understand us, better understand and better match advertising to users of its applications, to better support their customers. But what do robotics do? What do robots do?
Yeah, I'm very curious about that myself. Or is it just clearly something that is a part of our future and Google wants to be at the front of it?
That's the whole point of Alphabet. I mean, the whole point of Alphabet is to get irritating people on Wall Street to stop asking questions about why they're spending money on autonomous vehicles and things that don't directly contribute to like AdSense revenue. That's basically like Alphabet's a giant end run to stop irritating people from Wall Street asking stupid questions about things they didn't understand when the Google launched and they don't understand now. And they're basically like, we want to take this giant trough of money we've accumulated and do really cool shit with it.
Right, but why do they buy Boston Dynamics? And why, if they bought Boston Dynamics a couple of years ago and now it's rumored they want to sell Boston Dynamics, what were their expectations going in that they wanted to do with this company that was developing robots that potentially had military applications, also research applications, but DARPA, search and rescue applications. But what then changed to make them want to sell it? And what changed part of Google's plan? Was it not moving as fast as they had hoped? Did they not foresee this type of robot being useful to consumers or scalable, to everyday use? I don't believe it's just simply we want to build, an Android.
I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know. Google, what are you up to?
Yeah, someone at Google, get back to us.
I mean, it may be that it's just going to take that long to turn it into a viable product. I mean,
if maybe they see the robot as the future of the computer, like maybe with voice interaction, it'll be a Star Trek computer, but it'll be an android that we interact with and we ask questions to, we pose our queries, that takes care of our tasks, that does the shopping list for us, that orders the groceries. So they want to be the new computer, the new thing that we interact with the internet through.
Right.
Maybe.
Then they should be building the chair. They should be building the floating chair that serves me the red or blue smoothies.
The Wally chair.
Wally chair.
Right.
Yeah, that's what they need to be building. Yeah.
I'll buy a chair.
I mean, there's some articles that speculate that it's just the whole, because something I didn't realize is that the Boston Dynamic robots are all pretty much RC controlled in many cases, or they have to be sort of manually started to do the pick up the box project or something like that.
But their reactions that we see on video, those are all real time.
Yeah. But the idea that to getting them to move through the world like a toddler, to move through the world like it's the process. There's level of AI and self learning they just haven't really figured out how to pack into something that's small yet.
Right. So they've got to go in with the car, but they've got to compact it.
Cars are relatively finite environments. You know what I mean? Like, when you think about it, there's, and that's what's kind of funny when they talked about some of the cases where the car, like the accidents with the autonomous vehicles are usually when a human does something human. They do something erratic and that involves a poor understanding of physics and or traffic laws. And while the little Google car is going like, I'm going to slow down here because the thing is happening, and then runs into somebody because they don't use their brakes or something. But the level to I mean it's I just reread Isaac Asimov's I, Robot.
Oh,
and it's interesting.
I've only seen the movie.
Read the book. The movie's fascinating. It doesn't have a lot to do with the book, but it's so much. But so many of the tropes and the ideas and the root concepts of how we think of what robots are going to be someday are kind of all mapped out in that book. And it becomes, so much of what the ideas that he laid down there becomes sort of part of the fabric of how we think about robots. But the idea of like having a robot that can be like, Jeremy, would you like a cup of tea, is incredibly complicated. Like making a cup of tea is incredibly complicated. Like,
would you say that it does for robotics what like Snow Crash did for VR?
Certainly sets a standard, sets a base level, sets expectations, right? I mean, and that's like,
and informed the development of robot sense and those technologies sense, because it was really the engineers were fans. They were the things they were inclined to design and build. Whether it ends up being the right thing or not, or the most appropriate thing, were informed by the writers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's I don't know. I mean, it's going to take. I don't know. I mean, I didn't think we'd have autonomous cars as fast as we're going to get them.
Oh,
So
we're gonna get there in this podcast. We're gonna talk about that real soon.
by the time we're at the end of this podcast, autonomous cars will be for sale.
Sometimes it feels that way.
I thought you wanted to keep it at 2 hours, man.
Oh my goodness. Let's talk about some actual product news that people out there can buy. Starting with Android, another Google product, and HTC's new phone, HTC 10. This was also announced this week. Their new flagship. By all indications, it looks fantastic as an Android phone. You have 5.2-inch screen. You have new Snapdragon 820 with 4 gigs of RAM. All your speeds and feeds. You have your 3,000 milliamp hour battery, your SD card, removable micro SD card, fast charger, a 12 ultra pixel camera. Ultra pixels, of course, are just pixels that are larger than your typical Sony made pixel on the smartphone sensor. So
It's
I
a
mean, better
sensor
low light
thing.
performance.
yeah, so
Okay.
the actual it's a larger dimension pixel.
Got it.
So instead of saying there are 12 million pixels, 12 megapixels, HTC wants to make sure that there are 12 million ultra pixels.
Right, on the sensor.
On the sensor.
But the photo you sent me an email, that doesn't have ultra pixels.
No, it's just 12 megapixels.
All right. Just wanna be
But
clear.
each pixel is better than the pixel you would find on another phone. So says HTC. It's $700 off contract. You can pre-order right now. And while HTC has had a couple missteps with the last two phones, the M9, the HTC 10, people are saying is their return to form. I don't know if it's going to be good enough for them. Of course, HTC investing a lot in the VR space with the Vive, but they want to build up and compete up there with the LGs and the Samsungs, and this is a good step along too.
Samsung's on a roll right now. I mean, it's having to compete with Samsung just seems like a nightmare in the phone market right now.
Well, Samsung has successfully achieved, I think, in some parts of the world, just partly by just being the anti-Apple, they have achieved a brand dominance. People don't go into stores thinking like they're going to buy the newest Android phone and then
Right.
say, okay, I want the phone that's the latest Android software and the latest Qualcomm processor, and I'm going to choose from these four phones, whether it's LG, Samsung, Huawei, or HTC. They'll say, I just want the new Galaxy.
Right, it's like Galaxy has become the Kleenex of the tissues.
Right, and that's so funny because the Galaxy phones have in the past with their Samsung's UI and their version of Android been the least clean version of Android, and that's not to say it hasn't gotten better, and TouchWiz is better. But the first thing you do when you buy a Samsung phone is download the Google Now launcher.
No, I'm just laughing because I love the Samsung hardware, but every time I touch a Samsung phone, I immediately want to find something that, like a Motorola or a Nexus with a pure Android experience, just because it's so irritating. But yeah, I mean, everybody early hands on. I want HTC to be successful, but I'm not entirely sure. It doesn't suck like the last one. It's as good as the ones you remember back in the day. Like, that's good. I mean, they're moving in the right direction, but it's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be tough. I'm also curious to see whether or not anybody ever buys any of the LG modules, the camera modules and the audio modules.
Yeah, I think that was a bold move on their part, and I think by veering away from simplicity, then they moved away from, I think, the opportunity in the market. I think the mass market wants simplicity. They want power, they want speed, but they also really want something that's not complicated. HTC also has upscaling for audio, which might be interesting to you, Patrick. It upscales all audio, 24-bit audio. Now, does that matter?
It's the word gimmick comes to mind because depending on it's just listen to it in its native delete expletive format.
Yeah, I can render out some 16-bit audio in 24-bit. You know what it sounds like?
Crap.
16-bit
audio. Yeah, that's pretty gimmicky. Put a decent DAC inside of it. Do a decent job with your headphone amplifier, and then just walk away. I mean, it was funny talking about like DSD playback and stuff like that, but that's pretty obscure stuff at this point.
What might be interesting to you, Jeremy, and I know you are hesitant about trying Android. You love your Apple phones. You love your Apple ecosystem in your home. Is HTC 10 also is the first Android device that licenses AirPlay?
No way.
That's right.
Dun, dun.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know Apple was licensing AirPlay. So that allows you to
Stream music to Apple TV.
Only music, though.
I think only music.
Oh, interesting.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean that's embedded in a lot of devices, so that's going to make some people happy. I'm surprised HTC, or maybe they are working on this. Maybe it's too early, but I wouldn't be surprised to see HTC working on a Gear VR competitor now that they're in the VR space on the PC.
Yeah, we talk and VR maybe we should save this for the VR minute, but we all believe mobile is where the market opportunity for VR is going to be, and for mobile to scale, it's about dropping your phones in the headset.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's going to really be a thing until the phone is made ergonomically and from a power perspective. It is a launch as a VR phone first, and not just
whoever does motion tracking first is going to have a huge leg up there.
Right, and then also creates the content around that. Other new devices, Amazon, speaking of big companies that have big data centers, Amazon has their hardware successes of late. They've had the Echo Dot, which I really loved, and also, of course, the venerated Kindle. So Kindle, do you guys own Kindles?
My wife does.
Same.
Mine got stolen.
And you read on your iPhone or your iPad?
Yes, or books.
Or actual books?
Yes.
Yep, totally valid also. There's a new Kindle out. It was leaked just days before announcement, but it's called the Kindle Oasis. And it's not a replacement for the Voyage,
mm-hmm.
which is the super thin one with the lighting and the what were the features of the Voyage? I'm trying to remember right now.
It's not a good sign for a product when you can't really remember any of the features.
Well, the thing that wasn't, it was a screen. It was like they had the really high density screen. The Oasis is even more expensive. It's $310. Now $290 if you want the offers.
Right.
But it's a $300 Kindle.
Is it e-ink or is it LCD? Or OLED or something.
No, it still uses the e-paper.
You have to use e-ink to get the battery
crazy
life.
price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but it's the thinnest and lightest.
It's their ergonomics, and it's a Kindle, the first one that is asymmetrical. So it's held with a wider grip on one side, and then you can turn it upside down if you want to use it the other hand.
Like holding a book.
Kind of like holding a book, and that's for that reason has two thicknesses,
right?
3.4 millimeters and then 8.5 millimeters, and it weighs 130 grams.
That's a tapered design, Norm.
That's right.
With an ergonometric hand grip and page turn buttons that make this the most sensual experience anyone's ever had.
So it has the same screen as the Voyage. It's 300 ppi, 6-inch screen, and they say it's backlit, has 10 LEDs that illuminate, and also ambient light detection. But they say it will also have a passive reading time, a standby time of 20 months.
That's a lot of time.
Which is a lot of time.
Gotta hand it to him. That's pretty good.
I mean, you tell me that spec of that it can sit idle for 20 months, and that tells me that people are going to buy this. That's like the wrong spec to tell people, because you can buy it and you can put it in your drawer, and it can sit for 20 months, and you can read it once every year.
Well, I think part of that, it's really, I mean, it's funny. Okay, so they've put they've put additional LEDs behind it, so the screen is more consistent. The backlighting on the screen is more consistent, which is good. Cause that was one of the issues with the original Paperwhite, which is still fantastic to use. I get the idea that they want people. It's like the charging cover comes with it. The standby battery life is approximately forever. Like I would be really curious. In so many areas, like a tiny percentage of the total consumer base consumes like the majority of the content. Like I remember, learning from somebody 1,000 years ago at Tower Records that roughly 10% of the record people that walked into Tower Records in New York City, like 10% of their customers bought about 80% of the records that were sold, or CDs at that point. And the idea that there's
the whales,
the whales, the super consumers, and I'm trying to figure out is this targeted at them, or is this targeted at people who want to buy something more expensive that they occasionally use? Like it's kind of seems like it's split between those two things.
All right, so I'm reading more about this now. The 20 months actually was an incorrect rumor.
Oh,
they've come out and denied that. It's actually because of it's smaller and lighter. It actually only has 2 weeks of usable time, but you can buy an accessory, the battery cover, that adds another 6 weeks, so it's 2 total months of usage time, which is fine. I think what they really need to do, though, is develop a Kindle that just does passive charging.
Right.
Because the thing that I hate about the Kindle is the plugging in. And even if it's 1 month or 2 months, like a phone I know to plug in once a day or once every 2 days, or plug it, I have a pattern, right? A regular pattern. I plug it only when I'm driving to work. That's totally sufficient for a smartphone. Ebook reader that does 2 weeks, or let's say 1.5 weeks or 3 weeks of reading time, and even if you're a voracious reader, that kind of irregular schedule, like charging schedule, is an inconvenience. I would love for them to release a Kindle that just, because it doesn't need a lot of power, it can just do inductive passive charging, sell you a mat or something, put it on the side of your desk, and the idea is that you never have to plug it in.
That would be nice. But you still have to remember to put it on the mat.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and that's the other issue. I mean, make those mats ubiquitous. I think Starbucks has actually done a really great job with their partnership with PowerMat, which when I've heard that first announced, I'm like, I thought that was the worst idea ever, because the PowerMat chargers, inductive charging, one, the mats are ugly, and two, you had to buy special cases for your phones. And what Starbucks has done is rebuilt their tables and the benches to actually integrate the mats so they're completely flush. And then they give you at the end of each table a dongle with your USB or USB-C, your micro USB, or your Lightning connector, which is a small dongle with a circle on it, and then you just put it on the table. And that kind of leave on the table where you can see your notifications while drinking a coffee or reading a book. That's the usage behavior that you normally have when you have your phone out in the world. The $290 price point for this is, I think, crazy. I think we talk so much about what a smart idea it was to bring the Kindle down to be a commodity item. Under $100 was that magic price point, and the cheapest Kindle you can still get for well under $100. But the premium reading experience, is that really necessary? Is there a market for that?
Well, I don't know. Amazon's been making a lot of products now since they introduced the Kindle. And some of them are premium products, and they're probably just trying to find a way to position a Kindle that falls into that category. It's not going to, their market isn't every Kindle user. It's the ones with money to burn that they actually can make some margin on a product with.
Well, I don't know. Ever since the Fire Phone, it's curious to watch like the follow up products for the Amazon Echo. I mean, they're making a lot of hardware. And some of it seems to be more well thought out than others, and certainly I think there's been a lot of trauma inside that corner of Amazon since the Epic phone debacle. Fire phone. But like looking at the Echo Dot and the Echo Tap, the new Kindle. They may just have no way to do anything else with the Kindle Paperwhite at this point. I don't know how much they can scale the paper or the battery or anything. Like, what else are you going to do? Like $80, $120, $200, the Kindle for Kids bundle for $99. I mean, maybe they're just flinging it against the wall to see if there is this market.
Right, exactly.
I would hope that they would come up with more interesting business models for the books themselves.
Right.
If you assume that everyone has a Kindle app or Kindle already, don't make money by developing and spending R&D and making $300 Kindle products. Come up with new business models to get people to pay on a regular basis or pay for the content. And that's where you already have the opportunity.
I don't know if there's ever going to be an Audible.com model for ebooks.
It's called the library.
Well, yeah, which really undercuts the margins for Amazon. So since they finished acquiring all the public libraries and shutting them down, I think the whole book thing is going to be a real...
Yeah. You could never suggest the concept of the public library today.
Yeah.
Too much litigation.
Well, yeah. I still remember, like, well, you ever hear of Andrew Carnegie? What? He just gave away libraries?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Oh, my goodness.
All right. Is it time to talk about the Tesla?
Sure.
Let's talk about Tesla a little bit.
Do you want to talk about the Tesla or do you want to talk about the Tesla recall?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Let's talk about the product news. So Tesla's 3 cars, 4 cars, I guess, if you count the 3. And the 3 newest cars have some news. So we'll start with the 3. The 3 pre-orders now are over 300,000.
325.
Wow.
No, they're not slowing down. They're going to hit 1 1 million of these things before the years, or maybe before the 2 years are over. Maybe
That's
the year.
insane.
I bet they will.
People have that much money to buy a car. I mean, I realize I'm a cheap bastard and I buy old used cars because apparently I'm cheap. But that many people have like $125,000 for a car.
You have to think it's $35,000, $1,000 deposit
Before federal rebate.
Oh, sorry, I'm at the X.
You're at
My
the X. No,
apologies.
this is a 3. The 3, 300. If they get to 1 million, that cannot be indicative of a recurring market. You can't look at that like you would iPhone pre-orders, because I think there's been pent-up demand, and for cars, the timing is right. So they've built up 5 years of brand reputation of technology, which we talked about. There's pent-up demand, and there's a market of people who are kind of this upper middle class who buy phones on a regular basis, and for them, the $1,000 to get the newest car in 2 years, the car that they hope you buy a car for 10 years, right? It's once every 10 year this kind of thing happens. It's not like Apple could tomorrow announce a car, or next year announce a car and get the same 2 million pre-orders for a car, or after the 3 comes out, they couldn't announce the 3.5 and do the same. This is a rare thing.
Plus, the Model 3 has this kind of Kickstarter buzz to it, where everybody is hearing about it because people are putting their money down, and it's becoming news just because it's there's a pre-order line that you can join. And the $1,000, people are jumping in there because they think, well, maybe in 2 years I am going to want this car, and I'm going to want to be earlier in line than if I don't put $1,000 down and have to wait another year.
Why would I buy a Bolt EV when I could buy a Tesla?
Right. Well, at this point, you could lease a Bolt EV for 2.5 years and then finally get your Tesla, because this is going to take a while for them to come out.
I mean, I'm curious. I'm curious to see how, there seems to have been engine issues or motor issues with the Tesla S that have done a lot of recalls, that have done a lot of, basically the sort of, you bring it in, they just automatically swap the motors out because there's no repair. Like, there's some issue there. We've got a recall for something relatively silly on the Model X, which,
the back seat?
The back seat, the hinge. I'm really curious. And I want Tesla to succeed, if for no other reason. I love the idea of stuff being manufactured in the East Bay, and boy, they got a big ass factory down there. I want to say, I want people to be fully employed and staffing, but it's going to be really interesting to watch them scale for this. Yeah,
well, they've said the factory before they took it over was making 500 million cars a year.
Toyotas, and
I don't know about 500 million.
That's what they said.
They said they were making 500 million cars. Or no, 500,000.
I'm sorry. Okay. No, you're right. You're right. I was
That's
off
more cars.
by a little bit. It was
a couple factors of 10.
500,000.
I was like, there were like 695,000 F-150s sold in 2015. I'm not entirely sure.
Thank you, Patrick, for keeping it real.
Well, it's just like, I was just like, that's a lot of cars, Jeremy.
Yeah. No. Good point. Good point.
That's. I don't know. I mean, it's but it's not just the factory is not the production, is not the engineering, is not the design, is not the fulfillment. You know what I mean? There's making cars is a unbelievable pain in the ass. And making a lot of cars is an even bigger pain in the ass. And making a lot of cars that don't fall apart really fast is the pain in the ass as far as automotive manufacturing goes. Like,
what's also hard is landing a rocket back on a barge.
Yeah, and it's Elon. He's got it.
Exactly. He doesn't care about it if it's hard or not.
He's like Tony Stark without the death and the mayhem and the kicking the snot out of people. Or maybe he does that and we just don't know about it.
So it'll be a logistical challenge for them. But I think you look at these numbers. I think the takeaway is they hit at the right time. It was congrats to them. It's now to achieve these pre-orders, but it's now on them to actually deliver.
Yeah.
What's cool is that they're 2 years out from delivering this car, and there's all this excitement. So we don't have to wait 2 years for the rest of the car industry to take notice of the Model 3.
That's right.
So they can now jump on this and say, okay, electric cars are for real. What else can we do?
And I really hope that that's the message to take away. Isn't that they're not going to look at now they've gobbled up the market for the upper middle class BMW owners, and now they'll go for. I mean, they should look at the entire spectrum of the market also. There have been upgrades also to the Model S. The S got update this week. They changed the design a little bit. They got rid of that front fake grille. Finally, now it looks actually like the Model X in the front, and I think also there are some other performance features. But I like it. I like that. If you buy a Model S, if you bought one last week and you got a Model S that was essentially the same, looked almost exactly the same as someone who bought a Model S 3 years ago, that's not how the car business works. People buy cars, like if you buy a BMW or let's say you buy a Toyota Camry, the Camry from this year and the Camry from last year's design, it's really the body design that's changed. There's not a lot on the inside that gets changed. Every couple of years, every couple generations, they'll revamp something in the engine. But that's how it's going to work with electric cars too. Tesla is going to use that same motor and that same system, under the hood system, in the Model S, and just change the body, tweak it, and have your 2016 model, your 2018 model. And so that's what people like. They like the subtle differences because it lets them know that they have the newest version of that car.
What's interesting about Tesla is that they don't adhere to an annual system. That they're constantly rolling out updates, be it software or sensors.
Well, because they don't
tweaks.
Because they also don't. There's no demand problem. It's a supply problem right now.
But that's also. Let's bring in that back to the Model 3. You can't have 1 million vehicles. Let me rephrase that. It is generally not considered wise after Ford and GM and everybody, it's only like 3 models, so the parts inventory is relatively manageable. But to constantly change sensors or other hardware parts on the production run for a vehicle, that's complicated. That's logistics. Will you be able to retrofit these sensors into older models? Will other things have to change? What do you have to do? Like the whole. To make a $35,000 Tesla, they have to do a lot of things, They have
to be more efficient.
Yeah, they have to be way more efficient.
Right, and that's absolutely true.
And my understanding is, you're talking about a company that's spending a lot of money keeping Model S owners happy, thousands per vehicle. It sounds like. No, that may be poorly done math, or maybe people don't have it right, but. I would also be really curious. I'm wondering what percentage of Tesla S's and X's are being leased versus bought. It's going to be interesting to see what the secondary market on that is like, and how they hold up.
Yeah.
Over time.
I mean, they pride themselves on the warranty.
Yeah.
And those batteries are supposed to last, I think, 15 years or so before you have to swap them out.
Random note. I really, 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 really want to see the inside of the Gigafactory when it's done.
Yeah, dude.
To me, that's the most exciting thing Tesla is doing. Sorry, you were saying.
No, we maybe make that happen.
The biggest footprint of any building of any kind anywhere.
It's nice that something's finally looks bigger than the Pentagon, but it's just like the idea of scaling that much electric, like the ability to produce that dense, that much electric power, and doing it outside of Reno makes it even more awesome. But I still want the house battery, I want to put solar on my house so I can have my giant Tesla battery strapped to my house.
Model X got a recall. The back seats. They said it was not their fault. A third-party manufacturer who made one of the parts, and so it's a voluntary recall. People have X's. I think a couple thousand are out there already.
Not that many are out there.
Not that many.
No.
So it doesn't really affect everyone here. But it does affect one of our listeners who has a Model X, which I got to drive last week.
Was it fun?
So we just published a video about it. It's an hour-long tour of the Model X. I had to ask all sorts of questions of Christian, who owns the car. He was the one who gave us a ride in the Model S and let me drive it a couple of years ago when he got his signature edition. And yes, the short answer is yes. It was.
Did you take it off road?
A ton of fun. No, didn't take it off road. It's not an SUV. It's a crossover. It's essentially the same as a Model S.
I've done thousands of miles on dirt and gravel and rock and backcountry on a Subaru. Certainly the $125,000 all-wheel drive Tesla should be as capable as a Subaru.
Yeah, surely, it's a luxury car, and you asked the right questions, Patrick. That is something I did not want to ask someone of of their new $115,000 car, whether I could take it off-road.
The one great thing about the ridiculous amount of money, like between San Francisco and San Jose and Santa Rosa, is the number of ridiculously expensive, incredible classic cars that you see people driving on a daily basis. Like I no longer think about it like I see Tesla S's everywhere around here, like 85,000 BMWs, whatever. Like I can't drive to Santa Rosa to go see the dentist without seeing at least two, $100,000 to $300,000 supercars on Highway 101. Like there was a guy who used to be, used to street park during lunch around the corner from here, a 1964 Jaguar XKE that had been completely restored. Like people drive the snot out of their cars in Northern California. So I want to see like has somebody started gotten their rally on with the Model X yet?
So I guess what do you guys want to know about the car? Let's talk about the design, right? It's just a Model
doors,
S,
the rear doors,
right? So it's like a Model S, except it has the big back door because it's now a crossover. There's more storage in the back, and then the back doors are their gullwing doors, which we did a couple of demos of. And what's interesting about the gullwing doors is they are dynamic, the way they open. So if you're close to the door and we're standing about 1.5 feet away from the door, you could press the button, have it automatically open, and it would open a very tight open. It would go higher up vertically, but it wouldn't come out as far. And so the idea is if you're squeezed between two other cars and are about 1.5 feet or 2 feet away from those cars, you can still open the doors. It's difficult. It's not comfortable to get into the car when the doors are open that way. You have to kind of slide your body along the side. You can't just walk in, but it's possible. We demoed that. If you're in a garage, though, and you have more wingspan width and you don't have a high ceiling, it will detect, there are sensors above the car that detect the height, and then it will do a wider open, which is, I think, the more standard opening, and then you can just walk in. You can't open both doors at the same time with the key fob.
Really?
You have to open one and then the other. Like there's no press one button and both open.
You have to wait for one to open before you open.
No,
the
you
other?
can do it immediately after, but it's difficult to time them right. But that's like a minor thing. There's less room in the frunk. So the Model S, one of the more impressive things, because they don't use a traditional engine underneath the hood, under the hood is just more storage, and you can put like a sizable suitcase in the under the hood. Here, there's space, but I couldn't fit inside under the hood. Like, I could hide under the hood of a Model S. I couldn't do that in Model X. Inside, the seats are interesting. They sell in two configurations. You have the 7-seater or the 6-seater, so there's a third row that folds down. But you can also have in the second row, so the seats, as Christian described it, and as we felt, they get less comfortable as you go further back, as you would any like SUV that you put a third row in. But even the second row seats, he chose the 6-seater option, which means you don't have a middle seat on the second row. It's just an opening.
Right.
There are no armrests on those seats.
Really?
It's weird. Like
that's very suburban, Suburbosaurus
like you'd have to
suburban.
put your arm on the door if you wanted to rest your arm somewhere.
And the door has no built-in armrest.
No. So there's no armrest on the passenger on the rear seats. And then UI-wise, it's exact same computer screen, exact same UI as the Model S, which they've updated the hardware for, the software for over time. Questions? Yes.
The rear seats fold all the way flat, right?
They do.
So you can get all of the storage in the back.
Yeah. So the rear seats also it's smart in the way it folds flat, because it'll also, as you fold them down, it'll also push the second row forward, so it doesn't scratch the back of the second row. So it gives you the clearance.
Does every X come with the back seats?
I think so.
Is that an option? Okay.
Yeah, I think every X comes with the back seat, but then that folds down. But the second rows, we can choose whether you want 2 or 3 seats there.
Okay.
What's the benefit of 2 seats in the back row?
You can walk through the middle. There's a little more space between.
Yeah, 2 seats in the middle row, and I think there's 2 seats in the back row because that's all they could fit between the wheel wells.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, but you're asking why is it beneficial to have a missing seat in the middle row? I think it's just a matter of convenience, so you can get into the back row more easily, or you can lay things down in the middle. That goes like if you want to put your skis.
Oh, so it leaves an opening.
It's
there.
an opening.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to fold the seat to get somebody in the back row of your minivan /suburban /SUV /crossover? Just not having to do that will just be incredibly attractive to a lot of people.
So it's heavier than the Model S. The range is a little less. The top speed's less. Christian didn't get the ludicrous mode, which is $10,000 if you want the ludicrous mode. That's
it's literally a
$10,000
$10,000 software patch, right?
Yeah.
There's
really.
no physical hardware change. You pay us more money, we'll give you better performance.
That's right. Better acceleration if you want the ludicrous speed.
That's like the best marketing since the first time I ever saw a minimalist exposition at the Guggenheim Museum and looked at like a 15-foot wide canvas that sold for $500,000 that was covered with white house paint. And I was like, this dude has figured out the ultimate scam.
Yeah, right.
And that was like 1970s, like $500,000 when he originally sold it. I was just like, this is genius.
And now they're doing the biohazard protection mode in
Right,
the Model
air
S,
filters.
which actually is physical. They do have to improve the filters, I guess. But that's the actual, they're actually calling it biohazard.
HEPA 16 filters instead of HEPA 11 or something?
I don't know. It's supposed to get rid of everything.
It's supposed to destroy maybe and not just filter.
Oh.
I don't know. Maybe. Other things, the UI stuff looked almost exactly like the last time I rode a Model S. You have your dual screen. The screen splits in half, so you can put like a map on top and the website on the bottom. You can swap it around. There's music. There's built-in internet, uses AT&T, and they haven't charged owners for the LTE, the 4G. So, but there's no local storage of maps, so maps are always loading, and they're not vector maps. So you get tiling.
Ew.
That's funky.
When you zoom in, zoom out.
Yeah.
It has to
So
load.
basically,
to
if I
load.
don't preload my trip up to Point
I don't know if you
Reyes,
can.
I'm going to lose the ability to have my giant beautiful screen to give me the map.
You can only do music.
$25,000 car.
And there's no CarPlay or Android Auto
No,
where you can get your phone on the screen.
that's right. There's an adapter for charging your phone, and it plugs it with your iPhones just fine. What's also funny is that the album art, just like the Model S, he mentioned this last time, the album art pulls from Google Image Search.
Like the most popular
Yes.
result?
Yes.
Okay.
And he's filed this as a bug. He's like complaining to them, and he's thinking of like maybe changing like hacking the Google results for an album, so you get something inappropriate, and that's going to force Tesla to change it. But right now,
That's
if you play
quirky.
music, it just does a Google image search and throws in the first image as the album art.
Like, I guess they just didn't want to pay to have decent
The
album art.
database, yeah, things like that are weird. But I think the thing we all want to talk about is Autopilot, and this is what makes the S and the X, the newest S's and the X. It is an optional feature. What it makes it feel like really a futuristic car. It's adaptive cruise control, but with steering built in. That's the simplest way to explain it. And adaptive cruise control, which I don't have on my car. Do you guys use that? Do you have it in your cars?
I don't have it in my car. My car's 10 years old.
Yeah,
I had never used adaptive cruise control first, right?
Right.
So adaptive cruise control works. It's like cruise
It's
control,
cool.
but then it uses radar in the front and the back of your car, so it can also slow down, and you tell the car how far behind in terms of car lengths you want to stay behind or in front of other cars.
It's a good feature.
It is, absolutely. But you're still paying attention to the road because you still have to engage and turn. Even though for long stretches of road, if someone's driving down across country or down the I-5, we've heard plenty of stories of people who use cruise control and just doze off because they're putting two
Or just
fingers on the
space
steering
out.
wheel. They space out, exactly. It's so easy to space out.
And now you can safely.
And now spacing out is almost like the thing you can't help but do because the car takes over steering for you. And it works. It works so perfectly that it's terrifying. We got on the freeway, you flip on cruise control, you flip the switch again, two lights turn on, and the blue steering wheel icon turns on, and the car just takes control of the steering wheel, which still rotates.
Right.
The pedals, the brake and accelerator still depress without your feet on them, and it is making turns. It is staying in lanes. It is changing lanes when you want them.
So-
it merges onto the freeway.
Pause for a second. Changing lane, would you do you hit a button on the dashboard to change lanes?
You flip. So when you're in a lane and you want to change lanes, you just flip the signal switch all the way down. You know how signal switches usually have two levels of depression. One's kind of a tap and hold, and you release, and it stops. It's not that you have to depress it all the way, so it's clicking. And then the car, if there's no car next to you, it will know with radar. It will just change lane at full speed. When you're moving at full speed, just like adaptive cruise control, you can say, I want to move at 70 miles per hour, 75 miles per hour, and it will watch the road, see the lanes, put an on-screen on the dash, a visualization of the road with the speed limit sign and also the other cars around you, and drive. We took an off-ramp that was a carpool lane off-ramp that was one of those, stay on the right, stay in the carpool lane, and then you have the barriers, and so it felt like it was really narrow. And it did that at full speed, making the turn, and I freaked out.
Now, does Autopilot only work on the freeway?
No, it works on, it works everywhere where it can see the road, but it does not recognize stop lights or stop signs. So it is up to you.
So now we know the difference between autonomous and autopilot.
Yes.
That's funny.
And in fact, it works best in slower traffic. So the opportunity, and talking to Christian, he uses Autopilot to get from his house in South Bay to his office every day now.
Well, having been, oh goodness,
every day. But the advantage really isn't traveling at 75 miles per hour. The advantage is stop and go traffic.
I was going to say, so you can finally you
just tune out if you're stuck an hour in traffic to go 10 miles.
Other cars have stop and go adaptive cruise control, where that if you're in bumper to bumper, it will stop and keep going, but you have to steer. You're saying you can do this now without steering.
Without steering.
So basically, the person reading the newspaper, the person using the phone, the person applying eye makeup, the person who, because I'm thinking of things I've seen like on the Bay Bridge, the person eating, the person literally, my personal favorite, a Egg McMuffin in one hand and a newspaper in the other, steering with their thigh. They will finally be able to have a safer traffic experience for the rest of us.
It's not legal yet to do that. You still, according to Tesla, have to keep your hands on the wheel.
Right.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure every Tesla Model X owner.
Sure.
That's the thing. Even driving it, it's like 10 minutes on the freeway. At some point, the car is driving itself. Your brain is not engaged as a driver. Even if my hands are physically on the wheel and my feet are ready, it is not the same type of engagement, the same type of focus that you get. And it's almost weird because I'm having this conversation and I'm comfortable having a conversation while driving. I maybe would have been comfortable even looking at my phone while driving, even though that's not the right thing to do.
And illegal in the state of California.
But the fact that you can and not feel like you're in danger, even if I don't trust the car 100%, even if it's like a 90% trust at that point, like unpredictable things can happen. There can be potholes. Someone could swerve, right?
Deer.
So, right, exactly. The car is not exactly going to know. You don't know how the car is going to respond to that. Those are unknown variables. But even like that, even slight decrease in your focus, and that's not to say everyone drives with 100% focus. Like we all know that when we drive in long stretches of the freeway, your brain does this switch where you're focused on the road, but your brain like dumps that focus out of short-term memory real fast.
Yeah, like you're way into Zen beginner's mind. You're humming along with the radiator.
Exactly.
You're staring at the cows off the side of
But
I-5.
you're still you can react because that part of the animal part of your brain that knows how to drive.
This really important part of your lizard brain doesn't want to die.
Doesn't want to
really
die.
Good attention.
Exactly. But your conscious brain is smart enough that at the end of the road trip, that part I don't remember what I was doing at mile 35 or mile 185 on the road trip. It just goes away, right? But you're still in that moment in a fight or flight mode. With Autopilot, you're not.
Yeah, it's going to take you a moment to get back in there, which might be too long.
It might be too long.
Well, in theory, it's got it's got radar, it's got sonar, it's got cameras, it's got computers.
But it's not the full self-driving car. This is that intermediate step in between. Like Google's self-driving cars have no steering wheel. They want you to. They don't even want. They feel like, and maybe it's the right thing, that if you have a system, a closed system, where all the cars are aware of every variable, all the dangerous variables, the road and other cars, then that's better for everyone.
I am particularly torn at this moment, having just driven, because there was an accident on an 880, stuff piled up. There's one of the two main ways to get off the island I live on was blocked, so everybody was late and charging to get out the tunnels, which means we had people. My personal favorite, the people who come through the emergency lane. Rather than merging with everybody else, they decide they're going to charge the emergency lane and then stuff themselves in between, two lanes of traffic. And apparently we're all supposed to stop and bow to their self-interest. But I bring this up because, people do a lot of incredibly stupid things in cars. They do it, intentionally. They do it accidentally. They do it because they're not paying attention. They do it because, they are more important than everyone else in the universe and they have to be on time. So I completely understand exactly why Google wants the idiots to not touch the steering wheel, because there's a tremendous number of people that, even when they are paying attention, aren't particularly good at doing things like keeping up to speed. Like the number of people on 880 or 101 or 280 or I-95 or any other interstate in the United States that are doing 60 in the passing lane during heavy commuting hours, like those people should just be taken to the side of the road and shot. Like if you can't figure out that you're not supposed to be in the left lane when you're doing under the speed limit, you just need to have your car taken away.
And even like things that people don't always think about when they change lanes, you're not supposed to slow down.
Right.
When you change lanes, and plenty of people do.
Yeah.
Like the Tesla here, when it was changing lanes, maintain perfect speed.
It's committed. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. People who slow down when they're changing lanes are a nightmare, because then they slow down all of the traffic. So it makes sense to me for Google to want to eliminate the driver from that. I wonder if that means these middle steps. Is this the uncanny valley of autonomous driving? Is this going to be?
That's the thing.
Is this going to be more dangerous than actually? If it's not, you're not driving and the computer's not entirely driving, does that make it less safe than if either of the two situations?
It's that intermediate space between getting to the fully autonomous closed system,
right,
and where companies like Tesla are introducing autopilot-like features, maybe to different degrees.
Sure.
Some companies may get there faster, and maybe the high bar is going to be Tesla, but whatever, Apple does something like that actually adds more variability on the roads, and overall less attention from the drivers, and that's worrying. That's
We're in this period too where, since it is so new and there aren't a million of these cars on the road, the metrics that Tesla can glean from this experience are kind of limited. So, I think once the Model 3 gets on there, and every Model 3 will ship with Autopilot hardware, that's going to be huge for their machine learning.
right. And yeah, it's important that you say every Model 3 ships with the hardware, but not necessarily the feature enabled. That will probably be you have to pay a couple $1,000 to have that enabled. And I wonder if you have the hardware, if they have the cameras, are they still picking up the road data, even if Autopilot isn't being used?
Yeah, maybe
I'm
to
sure
send
they
back to
are.
Tesla to get the road data.
Yep.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Yep. I'm excited for it, though, because I want nothing more than for my kids not to even need a driver's license. I would love for cars to be more reliable by the time that they're 16 than humans are. Bring it.
I don't know. I like road trips. By the way, I figured out what the bioweapon defense mode is. Positive pressure inside the cabin of the Tesla Model X. So they overpressure the inside of the cabin to keep contaminants out of the vehicle.
Wow.
Although they claim the HEPA filters keep it as a surgical grade environment, which makes me wonder if Elon's ever climbed into a car with a kid that had just been playing in dirt.
Yeah.
All right. So there goes our Tesla talk. I think it's.
Have either of you laid down the cash?
On
I
a 3?
did for
On
the
a
3.
I did.
Wow.
I mean, I'm not committed to buying it yet, but I want that spot in line. I mean, I still have 125,000 people in front of me.
So you put $1,000 down for a spot in line?
Yep.
Both of you did.
I did. Also,
It's the same thing as having it in a non-interest-bearing checking account. I figured it's more interesting to be in line for 2 years and have that kind of drama in my life.
No. When you put it that way, it actually makes perfect sense.
Plus, I mean, they could be the kind of thing where you could flip it, honestly. Right. I mean, it's an expensive item to flip. But if there's this much demand and you're in there, pretty early, it could be a valuable investment.
Be interesting.
it's true. I don't know eBay Motors for Tesla cars and what the Model 3 market will look like.
We live in an area where Craigslist would work just fine.
I think you're right. Also, the timing was right for me. My car's going to be 12 years old when that comes out, 13 years old. So.
He says to the guy driving a 1995 Dodge 2500, and my wife has a 93 Volvo.
You asked the right questions, Patrick. That's why we're glad to have you.
Have you maintained your vehicle? Have you changed the oil? Are you gonna take care of this car, Norm? This is an investment, young man.
That's right. Let's go through some other bit of tech news rather quickly. Lytro, the camera company that made light field cameras, they made the Ilum and the first Lytro camera, which looked like a kaleidoscope. They have now pivoted to make video cameras for studio production. Their new camera was just unveiled this week. It's called the Cinema. It's crazy, also crazy expensive. On a rental model, $125,000 to rent it. But they can shoot light field video. Now, what this means is that they're taking not just color and luminosity data, they're also getting raw, like actual photon data, photonic data from every shot at up to 300 FPS, and each shot has 700 gigabytes of data, megabytes. Let me look up exactly what the details was.
400.
755 megapixel worth of data.
Wow.
Per frame. In the demo, they say that you can use this to change in post, change not only focus but also aperture and shutter speed, add blur, real blur, and then they're talking about making it really easy for you to then to composite in CG elements because you have all the data in the foreground and the background.
Can they combine cameras? Because the problem here is occlusion, right? I mean, you can't use spaces that aren't covered by the camera.
I don't think. I mean, they didn't say, but that would be interesting if you could shoot from multiple angles.
Yeah.
And get a 3D map, basically. Because
Exactly.
each of these cameras, they do, in addition to just the flat view, they do mapping of the environments. Yeah.
I don't know. If it does what it's supposed to do, $125,000 a day for a rental fee might not actually be bad.
Well, I hate the stories that say, "Oh, the Litro cinema is going to kill the green screen or make the green screen obsolete." Like, no, guess what? It's yeah, your hyperbolic headlines are going to make journalism obsolete.
Well, it may eventually once it is scaled down to the $1,000 a day, or you can buy one for $10,000 rental maybe, but that's a long ass way in the future.
I was just thinking of renting a Sony A6000 for $100 and passed it up. That's too much. $125,000.
Which includes a server to do all your local storage and processing.
Well, if you're shooting a major feature, $125,000 is like meh.
I guess you're right.
It's also about like, what does this actually bring? Like, are filmmakers or studios going to use it for like your one special bullet time shot in your action film?
Well, Litro's certainly hoping so because they couldn't quite push off 640 by 480 captures to the consumers.
That's right. Right.
I mean, it was cool, but it was a gimmick. So we have this amazing thing that you can only play on a web page, and it's going to remind you of taking pictures back in 1999.
Maybe watching episode 9, and then for the one crazy Litro sequence, there'll be a watermark on the bottom. This shot by Litro. We didn't pay the $125. We got the watermark.
That's awesome.
Another interesting camera technology. This one, a competitor to GoPro. There's a new Indiegogo ending this week called Revel, R-E-V-L, and it's a stabilized action cam that builds the gimbal into the housing of their GoPro-like camera, their action camera. Now, it doesn't do 3-axis gimbal stabilization. It's just for roll stabilization, and then it does for yaw and pitch. It will do digital stabilization, but it's a 4K camera. I think they're using almost the same image pipeline as the GoPro, but it has roll built in. And I think that's the future. We over the past 2 years, we saw how proven stabilized video, motorized stabilized video would be. And to get it miniaturized and built into the camera housing is the next step. And that's going to make things like GoPro and other action camera competitors really compelling. I got a demo of a quadcopter. It uses almost just that. It's called the Vantage Snap, and it's a small quadcopter that folds up. It's extremely portable. Actually, the props are guarded with a frame. If you Google it, it looks really, really cool. But also has an incredibly small 4K gimbal stabilized camera on the front of the housing that is much smaller than your Feiyutech 3-axis gimbals or the stuff you'd find on the DJI quadcopters. That's available for pre-order now for I think $900, but they're not shipping until middle of this year.
Real product, not a Kickstarter, or
a real product. I saw a pre-production model and it looked good.
The stabilization is 3-axis?
3-axis.
Cool. On that,
yeah. So the tip of the housing. They have a really interesting system that the quadcopter and all the electronics and battery it's like a rod, and then you magnetically attach it to the battery, attach it to the frame and the props, so you can swap out different props and different housings, but keep all the electronics and everything in just one stick. I'm gonna skip over the next few stuff. You guys using Mitomo? No?
I didn't know it was out here yet.
It's out on Android and iOS.
Fortune. Yeah, apparently 4 million users, averaging 1 million users a day. They're making like $280,000 a week off of it.
People love it.
Money.
Really?
Yeah. I was surprised.
The first gaming app turns out to be a social avatar creator, and they captured all the right things, the things kids love. all that Snapchat sharing, background warping, hat buying, clothes buying, avatar modifying business model, they got it.
It's like that nice game by Kim Kardashian or The Sims, but with Nintendo.
Look at those microtransactions. You can spend up to $49.99 on Mitomo coins if you want, which I'm sure kids do. Mom.
Facebook has a convention going on, a conference going on. F8, fate, no fate, but what we make. And the thing they're pushing is live video. Live video API.
That is the future of the company at this point. They are
Absolutely
obsessed, they are compelled, and
it's proven. I mean, Twitter, both Twitter and Facebook are fighting to be the platforms of the moment. Literally, the platforms that people use to get real-time events. Things to actually replace TV. Google and YouTube had this opportunity, and YouTube Live is what we're using right now to stream this.
Sure.
But it's really not broadcasting live in the same way that Facebook has the ability to, and it's proven. Like BuzzFeed earlier this week did a live stream of two of their editors destroying a watermelon with rubber bands, and they had 800,000 people watching at the same time.
That's crazy.
On Facebook. It's because people are on Facebook always looking for new stuff. I mean, we've talked about how Facebook's algorithm is so smart. The thing that people resist on Twitter is that Twitter is supposed to be a comprehensive feed where you update it. You have to update it regularly, or else you'll fall behind. And that's how they get people to stay engaged and keep on pulling down, pull the refresh.
Or people just miss huge swaths of the content they wish they could see because there's a flood of data they can't catch up.
And for a lot of people, that's why it's smarter to maybe narrow down how many people you follow to just a couple hundred, or to not have it be the massive thing. On Facebook, they go the complete opposite direction because they want you to follow as many people as possible. Because that gives them the most information as advertisers as possible, but they don't give you a feed that is comprehensive. They dynamically give you a feed so that when you update every time, you're always getting new things.
So if you and I follow or the same people, and we refresh at the same time, we get different feeds.
Right, because of our behavior. There goes your phone.
That goes my parking meter
of your feed. And the next step for that, logically, is live video for Facebook, because both Facebook and Twitter are getting people to pull down the refresh, to press refresh, to get new stuff, to watch new stuff, to put comments, to press fave, to the fave and retweet. That information is so valuable to Twitter, and for Facebook now having the like icon be 5 different things. That data is so important for Facebook, and have that be applied to live video where people are engaged for a long duration of time.
Right,
that's the future.
It's funny because like some of the stuff coming around F8 has been conversations about how Facebook is desperate to get people to start contributing more individual content, how it's become more of a place where people forward things around or cut and paste things rather than actually generating. People are sharing less of their personal lives, sharing less of the events in their life, and doing more of like newsy stuff. It's curious to watch them, trying to figure out ways to fight that and get people more invested in publishing on Facebook, and turn around and working on something that's such a huge challenge both to YouTube and to try to bring in major media and or people who will become major media. I mean, it's been interesting to watch because I know a lot of people who have huge followings on YouTube that were super excited about Facebook, and then realized that Facebook wasn't protecting their content. There was no signs of a business model. There was no revenue plan. So that's they're experimenting. It's interesting to watch them experiment with video. It's going to be really curious to see if this is still functioning in 3 months and how it is functioning. I'm sure it'll work, but I don't know how they're going to monetize this for the creators, except for the ones that they're currently paying to do amazing things with it.
Right.
Yeah. So their new live video APIs, their goal is to get it in every system as a camera.
Sure.
And
so you could be recording live with a drone and broadcasting to all the people on Facebook, which I can just see lots of teenagers getting sent to prison for going places with drones they shouldn't go, which is awesome and part of being a teenager. But if it's on Facebook, your mom and the federal government knows about it.
So the first standalone service,
I was just going to compare the number of active users Facebook has to Twitter. It's about 6 times
more on Facebook.
Yeah,
and more engaged. Facebook actually, or Twitter, number of regular active users went down in the last quarter.
Twitter did?
Yeah, Twitter.
Really?
Yeah.
Even with Periscope. That's interesting.
So And Periscope is absolutely Twitter's move in that same space. The idea that people are just broadcasting willy-nilly. There are devices now. We saw at CES a device called the Movi, and we really liked it because it had some built-in digital mixing, video mixing features. So it shoots 4K, but lets you crop in and pan from your smartphone while recording, and also broadcast live. The thing we were most hesitant about it was that Movi was founded.
Wow.
Did you not see this?
No, that's awesome.
So it shoots 4K. It does facial recognition, and you can just autopilot it, and it will use directional microphones to see who's talking, and then pan the camera between the people who are talking, or does it cut? And you can drag a box and move the box yourself. So you can do, on a touchscreen, on an iPad, be a virtual director with one camera. Now, you don't get the same optical quality as if you had multiple cameras, because you're just cropping in from a 4K wide-angle lens. But there's audio in, there's tripod mounts. The problem with the camera was that it was built by livestream.com, and so you could only stream to livestream and not YouTube, or you could record locally. But they rebranded the camera. It's now called the Movi. It's called the Mevo. It's coming out in July, and it is the first hardware with built-in Facebook Live integration.
Interesting.
So, I think it's a perfect podcast camera for podcasting.
Totally,
Facebook.
on the road.
Yeah, we'll be testing that absolutely when it comes out. The other thing, another piece of camera technology they announced is their 360 camera. This is not unlike Google and GoPro's, what's it called? Their rig, their array that they announced last year at Google. But this is an open hardware and software design.
Right, like up on GitHub. Go download it and build it yourself today.
If you have $30,000, you can buy off-the-shelf parts. But it will take, with 17 lenses, 360-degree spherical video, and it can pop on Facebook. What they don't think it can do, though, is do what Google does, which is give you stereo.
Yeah, have you...
it can do stereo, but we just don't know if it's as good as what Google promises.
Now, I haven't seen anything great from Google yet that claims to use this technology, and I'm hoping that that's just still in development. You can clearly see the seams, and there's simply no positional that I could see. And I was excited that they could possibly do that, because from the demo that they showed when they unveiled that, it seemed like there was a radius within which they could detect 3D geometry, and that they were actually mapping sort of like an advanced form of Street View, the environment, and that led me to believe you would actually be able to do some positional translation.
So we're talking about three things here, and we'll clarify. With that type of camera array, you can do stitching, right? So you can do just the simplest thing you can do is a 360 globe around you that's playing video. And stitching itself to hide seams, that is a challenge for video especially, but it's a software problem, and you can figure that out. Stereo is also another challenge, and so both Facebook's camera and Google's camera does stereo, and so because they're using these camera arrays, you get 3D image. If you put on VR glasses, you can see not only 360 video, but also in stereo. You get some depth. What Google's promising, what Facebook hasn't promised, is also some positional movement, that when you're in that space, you can actually see parallax when you move your head left and right, which increases both engagement and comfort in those spaces.
Google Jump.
That's the name of the product.
Now, they're not promising any kind of positional tracking that I saw. It just looked to me like it was possible.
Oh, okay.
Because their big thing is cardboard, which obviously has no positional tracking.
Right.
So until they actually have a product that supports that, they're not going to push it.
Google, I think, is pretty much they are heavily invested in cardboard as a platform, and it would be foolish for them not to have positional in cardboard in the next version.
Hopefully, they're pushing cardboard further than cardboard.
Plastic.
Yeah, Google Plastic. That's got to be next, right?
Yeah. Carbon fiber.
And play the theme for Mrs. Robinson.
There you go. Well, I think it's about time, speaking of 360 video, to jump into virtual reality this week. All right. So VR this week. Let's just continue on about our Facebook conference discussion. Mark Zuckerberg went on stage, talked about Facebook's 10-year plan, the things they hope to have done in 10 years. And he said in the VR space, they hope to have, we have the Oculus Rift being their first-gen device. They hope to have something that does both VR and AR in one device that is, like a pair of glasses that you wear. Whether that's going to be technically possible, even practical, in even 10 years' time, I think it's highly optimistic, but it shows that that's the goal they're shooting for.
I don't think it's optimistic. That sounds just about right to me.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got Google Glass and HoloLens right now, and if they can combine those with a wider field of view, 10 years seems like plenty of time for that.
All right. I like your optimism.
Yeah,
Well, the things that I don't know.
I do want it.
The things that people are still trying and grasping and holding on to be optimistic about is Oculus Rift shipping times.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, on this subject, last week I said that people who haven't received their Oculus Rift yet should just suck it up and deal with it and just appreciate the fact that Oculus is working their butts off to
You take that back.
I would like to formally retract that comment. Internet, you can stop tweeting me and emailing me. You're absolutely right. Since I made that harsh remark, Oculus has made another delay, or has announced another delay in shipping. It sounds like some people are now slipping a couple months.
Yeah.
Which is not good.
I have some people in my Twitter feed that have gone from like irritated to rage tweeting sporadically.
So what they promised was an update on the 12th, which was yesterday. And what they did was just send an email giving new shipping estimates, some of which is a range between like 3 or 4 weeks. A lot of people just got their estimates shipped back. People are speculating this is all due to a rumored component shortage, but no one knows for sure what that component is. I thought it could be like the lenses, because those are the things that sound like they're difficult to make. But if there's a component shortage at that level, it would be in the manufacturing stage. Like, how could they not have known? How could they not have things ready?
I don't know about that. I believe that there is a good reason for this. They do want to get these headsets out more than anything. It's not like the Wii where there's a intentional shortage to create demand. They're trying to get these things out there as hard as they can. They're probably working weekends to do it.
Maybe they've delayed the shipping to create negative buzz to offset the fact that so many people think the HTC Vive is a better gaming experience.
No, I believe there's a good reason. The mistake they're making is not being transparent and coming forth with a good explanation straight to the users. Do it wherever they like.
Jeremy, what you mean to say is Oculus should suck it up and tell the users why they aren't getting their toys when they're supposed to be getting them.
I don't know why they're not doing a better job communicating.
And it all has to boil down to the timing. Like, who knows? Like, there's so many unknowns in terms of like what's going on behind the scenes. Did they know that they would have a component shortage, and that's why they made the decision that the Kickstarter backers will get theirs first, which you and Will are happy, that you guys got yours early. And it's undoubtedly there are a couple thousand people out there, but way more than a couple thousand people pre-ordered at $600. Now they weren't charged yet, but it's the expectation of what does a launch mean? Is it a launch as in a console launch or a phone launch? We expect to have millions of units, or at least meet most of the demand with supply in the channel on day one, or is it kind of like a soft launch where it's going to be over time and done in batches? Regardless, we were led to believe it was March 28th. That's the launch. And now we're mid-April, and from a vocal minority, our understanding is that a huge number, if not the majority of people who've pre-ordered, have not received theirs.
I believe some Kickstarter backers have not received theirs either.
Right. So that is something that we would hope that they would be more transparent about.
Yeah, because I'm sure there is a good reason. I mean, I do my little manufacturing thing with GameFrame, and I can relate to shortages of certain components that freeze the entire line.
Now, if they were transparent and they said, "Hey, we fucked up," or this thing is the reason it's fucked up, and they did a make good. Everyone who pre-ordered before April 1st got their shipping waived, which is a lot of money for some international pre-orders.
Particularly, yeah.
Like, at some point, once people get their headsets, they'll start bitching after. They'll stop the complaining after that. But before you get the headsets, they have every right to complain about the headset.
Well, just
not shipping.
And I don't necessarily think it's the delay. It's the disappointment of being told a certain date multiple times now and having that pushed. So there just needs to be better communication. I
don't think it's going to make or break any headset. And also the same thing with the Vive. I mean, with the Vive, people are still waiting for theirs. I don't think as bad a problem from my perception of the community in terms of delivery. And, people got their Vives early, and there are plenty of units right now in channel, but it's still backlogged, their shipping.
Right.
Neither company gets a pass on this stuff. Both could be more transparent. And it just sucks that with this first generation device, like, we didn't see this happen with the first smartphones, as limited. Apple, which when they launched the iPhone 1, had production capabilities and logistic capabilities to deliver. I really hope it doesn't hurt VR in the long run.
I don't think it will.
Yeah, I think once people get their headsets, then it would have stuck for a couple months or stuck for the weeks that they got theirs delayed.
Yeah.
But
and
once they have it,
if you do just take a step back, the only solution that Oculus has at this point would be to not ship any, and to stockpile them in a warehouse somewhere until they have enough to meet demand. And that's not what people want either.
Right.
No.
So,
Well, they're saying, I mean, it's funny because the statement of TechCrunch, the component shortage impacted our quantities more than we expected, and we've updated the shipment window to reflect these changes. And apparently they're trying to add capacity as fast as they can.
Mm-hmm.
There is an unsubstantiated rumor that the component is the Xbox gamepad.
oh God, that would really piss people off, because that's the one component nobody wanted or needed.
And I no one knows if this is actually the case. It hasn't been confirmed either way, but that's what some people are speculating. And
is that likely though? Because that is,
I don't know.
There's got to be so many of those, and that's such a well-oiled production machine. They've been making that for years now.
The Xbox One has been out for a while, but the rationale between the people who leaked this information is that Microsoft did not expect the extra demand, that they built controllers with a known quantity for their supply and demand for console owners, and so to adjust their
they looked at Gear
their
VR
supply.
sales and said, "Oh yeah, we can handle a few thousand."
Right.
Well, or there would be the perfect classic kind of startup moment, because I've dealt with a couple companies recently, and it's like, yeah, I get it. You're a startup. You're new at this. All these people that gave you money, did not one of them have an expert that said, you're going to scale, and it's going to scale bigger than you think if this goes right. So maybe you should actually pay. Like, did nobody at Oculus talk to Microsoft about this? Did they secure a supply for this? Did they have a number that they went to them? I mean, I don't know. I'd like to think if it was the Xbox controller, that'd be like, they would ship these things out and be like, we'll send you an Xbox controller as fast as we can. Or here's a $50 coupon. Go find one.
Right.
Like, here's the map. We went to Microsoft and got a list of children in your neighborhood with Xboxes. Go steal one of their controllers so you can use your Oculus
I don't know. I
Rift.
mean, who knows what the component shortage is? That's the only thing they've said, is that it is an unexpected component shortage, and it sucks.
That's one thing. Like, if you are as big as Apple, you don't experience this quite as much because you do make more of the components yourself. Whereas Facebook makes zero components themselves. They've designed them, but they have to outsource everything.
Right.
Well,
they
it's
don't
also
sell hardware.
I mean, the projection and the planning and knowing how to, knowing where the bottlenecks are going to be and having the people. I mean, there's something to be said for, walking up to somebody like Foxconn with a bunch of talented engineers and production managers.
And basically owning the place,
Yeah.
I mean, if there is any silver lining to both these, is that this is the first generation, and it really isn't a mass market device right now. So this becomes a much bigger problem for VR as a whole if it is the device that, instead of a couple 100,000 people pre-ordering at $600, it was 10 million people pre-ordering on the Apple scale.
Is it $300 or $200 that it goes to everyone owning one of these? I mean, what do you think the price is? The commoditization price. When does?
Oh, I think it's the real commoditization price is that it's $100 plus the phone you already bought.
Right.
Plus the phone, maybe a more expensive phone.
that's what it is with the Gear already.
Right. But I mean, with feature parity.
Yeah.
That's the commoditization price. On the high end price, and there will always be a spectrum. Right. I think on the high end price, it's probably $500. It's console prices.
Okay.
I think that you'll be able to augment it too with various haptics. So you'll be, you've read Ready Player One.
Yeah.
The same kind of thing. I bet there'll be tiers of haptics that you can engage with.
Or tiers of fidelity, visual fidelity.
Yeah.
That would be irritating. I mean, it just like having to pay more to get. Well, I guess it makes sense. Not everybody has a 4K monitor, right? Sorry.
Yeah, that's the PC game experience. Not everyone has the same frame rates. Some people will get the smoother gameplay, and some people won't.
I don't know. I mean, looking at PC gameplay and this like 4K scales out so slowly, I would be curious whether or not VR could afford to have multiple levels of fidelity for the the game developers more so than the actual consumers buying hardware.
Yeah, at launch, I think they're gonna go more like a console model and be more standardized. Even consoles, which have been around for decades now, are not tiered as such in terms of their their cost and performance.
Well, they can be standard now because there is only one resolution in VR. There is only the Vive/Oculus resolution.
Right. And on the consoles, they target the one resolution, 1080p.
Exactly. Yeah, but I think as time goes on, it will become more tiered.
All right. We shot a comparison video between the Vive and the Oculus Rift, and you guys should watch that. Jeremy and I had an interesting discussion about our thoughts. Minute differences, like this is really a video if you really want to get into the real fine differences in the image quality and the ergonomics. For people out there, we know how we're putting on the HTC Vive. We've tried putting it on a bunch of different ways. Don't worry about it. We are not intentionally making it uncomfortable for our heads. We want these things to be as comfortable as possible, pulling it back as far as possible, and still the Oculus is far more comfortable.
Yeah,
to wear.
Which is not to say you can't wear the Vive for long periods of time. It's just not as comfortable. But what's interesting is that we are already at launch at the stage where at least one of them is comfortable, which means that moving forward, we're so close to that threshold that every headset should be comfortable as of the next iteration.
You would hope.
Yeah. Even the PlayStation VR, by the way, is fairly comfortable.
And PlayStation VR is the one that's the most comfortable for me to wear with glasses. So
yeah, it's lightweight and has that rigid strap like the Oculus has. So I think it's at a good point. I mean, going forward, this isn't going to be a real problem.
Let's talk a little bit more hardware. Patrick, you tried the OSIC 3D headphones.
I did. I was down at CanJam a few weeks ago, the headphone gathering that HeadFi does, and I did not expect to see the OSIC crew there. And I've been getting a bunch of questions about it. You know, they're selling. I think they're up at around $270 now. You know, they're gonna sell for. I want to say $400, $399. So the idea is that it's true 3D positional audio. And this is a big deal. One, because most 3D audio sucks. And people are like, should I get into this Kickstarter? And it's like, yeah. I've heard it. I did not hear the full-on VR demo. What I heard was a very, very simple demo. They had the full VR demo rig was at another location. But what they had there worked, which to me is a really big deal. So the idea with these headphones is there's multiple drivers in each speaker. That's not particularly new. You know, it's doing psychoacoustics. It's doing head-related transfer functions. What is new about it is that the headphone is apparently capable of measuring the distance between your ears. Basically, it does some measuring when you put the headphones on. That allows them to adjust the algorithm to give you a better head-related transfer function, which is a really dry way of saying is your ears can pinpoint the direction, the location, the elevation, basically where a sound is coming from based on the differences between the sounds hitting your ears. You know, the time delay, the shift, the frequency changes. This whole process of hearing, it's pretty well mapped out. Almost every 3D audio device I've ever heard has been really, really meh. This one, and it was a really simple demo. You put the headphones on, there was a band playing over there, you turned your head, and the band stayed where it was supposed to be. And it sounds shockingly realistic. And from what I've heard from people that heard it at GDC and other places, is that the VR demo is pretty spectacular in the sense that you think the thing's coming from up behind you, the thing is over there, at a level that seems to be a little more advanced than what Dolby's been doing.
Does it require a certain level of software support from the programs that run?
They're working on it. It's they seem to be working with everybody as near as I can tell. Because part of what was there was kind of whenever I've had some really wonderful successes on Kickstarter, and then I've got a couple projects that I'm still waiting to be fulfilled. One of which is literally a guy in his garage building things, which I think is adorable and awesome and honorable. But I would like to have had them a year ago like I was supposed to. The crew that put together these headphones are basically ex-Logitech audio people. So they have the experience, they have the context, they have the science, they have the manufacturing facilities. But it's going to be interesting, right? Because part of what they're claiming is that it's going to be incredibly realistic and give you a tremendous audio experience. The VR stuff is going to be based on the algorithm that's coming through when you plug them in via USB to your computer. So I'm a little curious to see them when they ship and get hands-on with them, but they're claiming they should sound amazing for music because of the way they can manipulate the audio to deal with sort of the shape of your head to give you a better stereo experience.
So you're saying it will even sound, it gives it a certain positional experience to stereo as well.
Well, stereo is a positional experience, but it's a very, very basic positional experience, right? Because you start with mono, which is like we got a recording, it comes out through that speaker over there, and you go to stereo, which is the engineer manipulates the audio coming through the speakers. And if they do a good job recording and a good job mastering, you end up with this thing that kind of recreates the bands in space. Like, there's the kick drum and the bass player's over there and the singer's in the middle. Oh, the singer just walked over there. And it's very, very realistic. Binaural recordings basically take the idea that you take a head. Because there's a big difference between recording something like I have a mic on a stick versus I have two ear-shaped things.
Okay, but with stereo, you're kind of locked down. It's almost as if you don't have positional tracking. So, like if you rotate your head, that's not going to change. Are they actually doing positional with stereo?
They're
saying
that way? They're doing.
As you turn your head, it's dynamically changing the stereo source.
That I don't have an intelligent answer for, because I don't think there's any way to do positional audio unless they basically make the assumption that the audio is coming from wherever your head was facing originally, and if you turn it, then they move the audio away. The big for them really, it's like, they want to be able to tie it to any object or character in a game engine in real time.
Yeah,
because
that I
basically
get.
These guys
but
are
that's software. So what does the hardware bring to it? Because you can get binaural, you can listen to YouTube videos that were recorded with great stereo headphones.
So it's kind of funny because two of the most opposite kind of engineers I talked to at Cam Jam, one of them is very old school stereo. I mean, he's doing bleeding edge technology, but he's basically like he wants to have the perfect headphone experience for people with audio recordings. And the other one was, the guy who's running the team at OSIC, and they were both talking about head-related transfer functions and how the simple fact that we record things. But everybody hears differently because your ears are different, the shape of your ears are different, the distance from your ears to your shoulder. A lot of really subtle stuff goes together in how we experience audio in sort of, in environments like this, right? And the idea that headphones take all of that away, and they will be able to do by having 4 drivers inside of it and using their algorithm, that they will be able to do a better form and a more sophisticated form of 3D positional audio than anybody else does currently.
Interesting. Well, we'll be following along with that Kickstarter as it goes along, and hopefully
I bought
get
it.
some. Oh, you did? Nice.
I didn't lay down for a Tesla, but my wife's going to kick me out of the house.
What's the entry for that?
$270.
Okay. When those come out, hopefully we'll have you come by and review them.
Maybe we can, plug them into some of the VR gear and see if it elevates your experience.
No, absolutely.
Are you guys happy with the audio that's coming out of the Vive and the?
Well, the Vive has just headphone jack. You have to put in your own headphones or earbuds. And the Oculus, yes. And I would think that because the Oculus, the headphones are pretty locked in place, the distance between the two sidebands, that they can also approximate where your ears are. Some VR software stuff. Jeremy, you tried the Apollo 11 experience, which is now available in the Oculus Store. What did you think about that?
Yeah, this is. I think this was a Kickstarter, right? About a year ago, they launched this thing, and there was a demo you could download for the DK2, which I was always intrigued by it because it enters that educational realm of how VR is going to affect the learning experience potentially. And it's all we saw last year was you watched the whole Kennedy speech about we're going to go to the moon. And then you see the Apollo 11, and you ride up the elevator to it as if you're one of the astronauts, and then you step on it, and you launch into space. And you're sitting inside the Apollo 11 cockpit, and you hear the one-to-one. It's a real-time launch, like the minute beforehand. You hear everybody talking, and then it's all very dramatic. You lift up, and you leave the atmosphere, and then a pen like floats across in front of you, and it's actually very, very. It's a great experience because you experience something that actually happened, and it gives you an appreciation for it. So now what they've done is they've launched the full experience, and it goes beyond that. And it's not real time in the sense of the whole mission, because the whole program takes about an hour to finish. But you do fly through space. You detach the lander,
the LEM.
Yeah, exactly. The lunar, what is it? Exploration, and then you land on the moon. And you explore the surface of the moon, and you get all the live recordings from that, and it's very moving.
I think it was a great way to experience historical audio and
it puts
video.
It puts it in a much better context, and we're so used to hearing snippets of those clips.
Yeah,
one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. But this, you get to see the whole thing play out in front of you.
Yeah,
and little things like how did Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong actually get back to Apollo 11, like things like that I never even thought about, but they're right there on the moon on the lander, and they have to launch back up and reattach. things like this. I mean, just actually going through the whole experience with them, I think it just blew my appreciation for that experience even higher than it was before.
So you saw the potential then for history lessons,
Exactly.
storytelling, documentary in VR.
Yeah, it's interesting. Documentary in the sense of re-experiencing an actual historical occurrence.
And there's still some directing work that goes in to
Yeah.
where they place you and how they animate, and so there is a little bit of that subjective design, but it is also taking the source material, the audio, the visuals, the photos, and as much as they can to recreate that experience.
Yeah, people talk about VR as being an empathy machine. And that's true when you're in VR with other people. You want to respect their personal space. But this, I think, it uses that effect to give you empathy for a historical, occurrence that actually was incredibly, incredibly scary. And you feel that. You feel that sense in a way that's not projected. It's pretty cool.
Speaking of things that are scary, last week I had a chance to demo the Vive to a friend and his kids, and I had never given a kid a VR demo before.
Oh, dear.
And something
How
that,
old?
I think a 7th grader
Okay.
and a 5th grader.
Okay.
And the ergonomics, like these headsets are not made for kids. Like they're too big for kids.
Yes.
They droop and they do not harness properly. It was weird. They were once they got in there, and they things like Job Simulator, which is funny because they have to look below the countertop. They perfectly naturally interact with all the things and do everything that an adult does, pick up things and throw things, and love that experience. But there are a lot of experiences where the isolation of VR was terrifying for them. Even things like the Blue, where you had the whale experience, which you start on the deck of a sunken ship. That was scary for the kids because there were no other things in that. They felt alone in that environment. And even things like Job Simulator, where you have the robots flying around, even things like AI characters that they could look at and respond to emotionally, they felt much more at ease.
That's interesting.
Which I think is something I didn't think about before. Just that feeling of isolation or all around you.
Right.
It's interesting to watch because you see adult. I mean, I myself, like, at one of the Oculus Rift demos, like they're like, jump off the cliff, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, there's a couple. I'm trying to remember. I want to remember the name of the titles, but there's a couple games that I've played recently on the Vive where the enemies don't just come up to you like they might in a Space Pirate Trainer, and you have to shoot them. Like they actually will come right up to you and even pass through you in some cases. There's the one robot one where they come out of the suspension chambers and walk towards you because you
raw data. Yeah.
So that's an example of it. There's another.
They invade your personal space.
Where they invade the personal space, and I can actually play those games fine, but when they get so close, I just nope right out of that game because it's actually too much for me. It overwhelms my sense of dread because they really are right up in my face, and I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah, I was playing Hordes, the zombie game in VR, and it does the same thing where you start by going down a corridor on a platform, but as it opens up and the corridors, you have three places you have to look, 3 directions, then it gets more unnerving and the zombies get closer.
Well, that means
faster.
the VR is doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Precisely, man. And that's people who are into horror experiences. This is going to start to draw a line between the people who think they're into it and people who want it.
Emphasize the middle part of that horror word.
Sorry, yeah. Well, it goes for both pronunciations, but yes, the horror genre is going to actually be a little too scary.
New Retro Arcade update?
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So you guys have you ever played New Retro Arcade?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you got to try it. It came out initially like maybe a year ago. It is the virtual arcade for VR, and you navigate gamepad, you walk through a virtual, old school 1980s arcade, and you can actually play them. Initially, they weren't the best versions. I forget what they used. It wasn't a Game Boy, but it wasn't the MAME emulation. Mm-hmm. Then they came out with a new version they actually emulated every game in the arcade through MAME. You walk up to it, you can actually play them with the gamepad, and it plays right on the screen. It's not like it's a takeover or anything. And there's also little things like you can pick up cassette tapes and put them in tape players and play.
Nice.
And there are Game Boys. You can pick them up and play, and you can find cartridges and swap them out. You can play a SNES on the virtual TV, and it's cool. So now, but you haven't been able to play that with the official CV1, the official Oculus Rift, until today. So they've released 1.3. So if you're into that, I would download that immediately.
And then also, I got to use the VR desktop in the Rift, and I loved it.
Yeah,
the virtual desktop.
I feel like that's the only title where I feel like the resolution is a limiting factor.
Yes, and it really is the distance between. I'd actually lean in to look at the text, but I was able to multitask. I was able to put a movie in the corner, and browse the web and do some file management and type. I type a Google Doc.
Really?
I type these show notes.
Okay.
In the virtual desktop.
Does Tony Stark type into Jarvis, or does he talk to Jarvis?
He talks to Jarvis.
Because this is sounding pretty Jarvis-y to me. Like I still like my favorite moment in all the Tony Stark's movies. He's working on the car and he's pulling down the diagram for the engines and he's working with.
And you know what? The virtual desktop, because you can make the background translucent, so you get no background. It's just your floating windows. There is even you render a further background. You can do it in stereo, and it curves around. The option you have it flat, but it's better if you have it curved. And I use it on my. It's a representation of my 4K monitors. It's a lot of screen real estate. And then you can adjust the distance from your eyes and the height, but it works. Now, watching a movie was not as nice as just leaning back and watching a movie on my monitor in terms of the pixel density.
Sure.
But being able to put videos in the corner of the screen and then have other applications up, I mean, that's what I wanted.
I mean, is this something? Is this a lark for you, or do you actually see this becoming something you use as a productivity tool?
I see it being something that I would love to be able to switch back to and from while in other VR experiences.
Okay.
I want this to be the home menu at some point.
It's going to be indispensable for my Vive box because I'm making a headless, Vive machine in my living room.
Right.
I don't want to hook it up to I don't want a monitor out there.
Right.
So, and we'll talk more about that and what I'm testing because to make it headless takes a little hardware trickery, but you can't boot into Steam VR mode yet. Maybe they'll unlock that. But so you have to boot into VR desktop in order to if you're only going to have a headset.
Interesting.
All right. Speaking of what we've been testing, here comes our last segment. Testing this week. Hey, what have you guys been testing? We are quickly running out of time because I have an important phone call in 5 minutes. So I'll say I have the Samsung Galaxy S7. Been using that. It's a loaner, so have that, and we'll shoot a video. But I quite like it so far. Also, have been doing more testing on the Phantom 4. Been doing some battery rundowns and not getting nowhere near 28 minutes of battery life that they said. I've only been able to get, even just hovering in the sky, about 22 minutes at most.
Comparable to the 3 then.
Yeah, it's better than the 3 I have, but it's nowhere near 28 minutes. And then you had Jeremy, what have you been testing?
So in order to do a headless virtual desktop, you need a monitor for the program to even work because what renders in virtual desktop is a representation of your monitor in 3D. And so the way around that is to basically buy this little component that was a Kickstarter last year called the Headless Ghost, which is an HDMI jack, or not a jack, I guess a jack, with a tiny little circuit board attached to it, and it pretends to be a monitor, and it has nothing else. It doesn't have any outputs. All it is an HDMI thing you stick in your computer, so your computer thinks you have a 4K monitor.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's $20. Just Google Headless Ghost if you want to do that. It also has numerous advantages or uses where you can basically like a remote desktop doesn't work to its full capability unless
you have
the GPU is initialized, and the only way that happens if there's a monitor attached.
Nice.
So it works for Macs, PCs. It's basically whatever takes an HDMI port. It's pretty awesome.
Cool.
And Patrick, anything else you've been testing?
I've been playing around with something WeBoost, which is a company from Wilson Electronics that does cell phone amplifiers or cell phone boosters. WeBoost Echo, which just came out, and trying to see if I can solve the problem with phone calls not working in the back corner of my house. Oh. Not as sophisticated as a headless ghost, but
well, I'm sure we'll be able to find out more about that product and you're testing of that on TechThing, which is your other show. You can go to techthing.com and follow Patrick on Twitter at Patrick Norton. Jeremy, I believe you're still at Jerware, kicking but not going to pass Kishore in the big competition. But we'll have you both on the podcast in the future to really measure your Twitter sticks. I'm, of course, at nchan, and thank you guys for listening this week to This Is Only a Test. We'll be back next week. I actually will be out of office, but I'm hoping that Jeremy and Will will co-host and find a way to get you guys a show. Adam is in Washington, D.C. Right now, so you can check out the White House Science Fair, White House Science Fair stuff going on. We'll have some content from there. And if you're in L.A. next week, maybe we'll see you at Monsterpalooza or even at the BattleBots filming. Tickets are still available. You just got to go to battlebots.com and click that link. But until then, we'll see you next week. And we do have a new outro, so I'm going to play this one right now. Once it loads.
Right now.
In SoundCloud.
Right now.
And now. No.
Robosexual, I thought, was between human and robot. We're not perverts here.
Almost stuck that landing.